wanted to post just sort of some thoughts about the hearing in Florida last week at the State Board of Medicine, where they thankfully voted to protect Floridian children from incredibly damaging medical experimentation. And one of the biggest concerns that the activists on the other side had was that many of us who were there testifying were not from Florida. And that is true. There were some who testified who were from Florida, but there were some of us who were flown in. And I want to address why. First of all, trans activists have successfully bullied many of us into being silent in our own communities. We've gotten death threats, we've gotten rape threats, we've gotten threats to have us kicked out of our housing, we've gotten threats to go after our employment. And so many of us are afraid to speak out in our local environments because of all the threats that we've gotten. So we are feel safer going to other places to share our stories. Second, our stories are universal. We should not be dismissed simply because we do not reside in a specific state. What's happening is universal. My story of desisting after getting therapy is universal. It's a story of someone who the trans rights activists, by their own definition, would acknowledge was transgender, who then got therapy and resolved that gender identity confusion and went on to very thankfully not be medically transitioned. The stories of the detransitioners who went through horrific medical experimentation interventions to treat mental health issues, their stories are universal. It doesn't matter if they're from Maine or Vermont or Florida. These are stories that need to be heard and shared with medical experts so that they understand that these are mental health issues and that nobody's born in the wrong body. And finally, if a man can identify as a woman, he can certainly identify as a Floridian. Part of this whole issue is that the trans activists are distorting reality. They are changing empirical facts based on feelings. They're suggesting that their feelings dictate reality and going so far as to change birth certificates. Well, if that's true, I could easily insist that I identify as somebody who's from Florida and insist that I should be able to get my birth certificate changed because I have a strong feeling that I was actually born in Florida and not in Utah. And I want that reflected in my birth certificate. And I could even say that I'm fluid with my residency, with where I identify from, and that I identify as a resident of whatever state I happen to be in. And that is just as valid as a man saying he's a woman. If we're going to be able to alter reality, if they're insisting on us accepting their feelings as fact, then we should be able to have our feelings also be fact. And in this case, all of us who testified identify as Floridians, and therefore you have no right to dismiss us. You have no right to dismiss us anyway because our experiences are valid and authentic and need to be heard. But the height of absurdity is having men insisting that they're women and undermining women and insinuating themselves into women's spaces and wearing women face and then getting upset because some of us who testified aren't from Florida. Well, we officially identify as Floridians, so accept that as our authentic selves and who we really are. That's just how absurd this whole thing is. And that's why we need to push back because children are being harmed by this ideology that is based on somebody's self-proclaimed feelings, which may or may not even be true, instead of reality. And again, I just want to thank the doctors in Florida for doing the right thing and protecting children. And I urge states across the nation and I urge nations around the world to follow suit and push back against this incredibly harmful ideology.